Hello, this is Charles Scoville, your Golden Harvest agronomist, with your Agronomy in Action Focus Friday podcast here on July the 18th. Now, as usual, we're going to start with a heat unit accumulation update, talk about tar spot now that it is confirmed in Michigan and northern Indiana, discuss ear mold management, and also share some thoughts on spider mite management, being that it has now also been identified in our area here. Now, let's begin as usual by talking about our current heat unit accumulation. So, as we do always, we're going to base that heat unit count on a planting date of May the 1st. And let's look at that East Lansing area first. We've now accumulated 1,214 heat units. So, in comparison, we're down only 73 heat units from last year, but only 8 units from the 5-year average. If we go south and look at Coldwater, we're 98 heat units behind last year, but only 18 behind the 5-year average. And finally, going north to Mount Pleasant area, there were 86 units behind last year, but finally, we're actually 5 heat units ahead of the 5-year average. So, as a whole, we are gaining nicely again on that crop progress this past week. Now, as for my travels this week, wheat harvest is well underway, and a few more cornfields are starting to tassel across the geography. Overall, the crops are still looking pretty good, but when I'm out flying my drone, I'm seeing a lot more pockets of damage from those earlier saturated soils that, they're going to show up now. My fear is as wetter and possibly lower yielding corn in the fall, just due to its delay in maturity from all these challenges. And drought, though, continues in northwest to north central Indiana, as well as a path from that southwest and, in fact, most of West Michigan running kind of diagonally all the way up to the tip of the thumb. Now, tar spot, of course, it's been spotted in Michigan and Indiana over the past few weeks, with still no reports of it in Ohio. Now, in Michigan, it's officially in Cass, Eaton, Gratiot, and Montcalm counties. In northern Indiana, it's in Elkhart, Noble, LaPorte, Stark, Porter, Pulaski, Fulton, and some other counties even further south. So, what should we be doing about it this next week? Well, first off, let's start scouting our fields. We're going to be looking for those small black lesions on the lower to mid leaves in the canopy, and those that just don't rub off when they're wetted and rubbed. And most, though, of the infections we're going to see this week is from fungal pathogens that are already in our own fields. This is kind of what I call homegrown tar spot. Now, of course, later in the season, when the disease starts blowing around, then we'll start to see lesions higher up in the canopy. Secondly, we're going to consider an R1 application of a multiple mode of action fungicide if A, you find tar spot, of course, lesions in your fields. B, you have a history of tar spot in your fields, and, especially if these fields are irrigated or, you're having excess moisture, such as heavy dews or, even some cooler overnight temperatures. And then C, you planted hybrids that are more susceptible to tar spot. So be sure to check with your seed company for ratings on those hybrids that you planted. And though no hybrids are resistant, there's a huge difference in the level of tolerance to tar spot across that corn genome today. And then, of course, in some cases where tar spot gets bad enough and, if the weather remains conducive, a second application may be warranted. But hey, we'll talk about that more in a few weeks if things really start to get out of control. Now, while we're talking about the use of an R1 fungicide on corn, I also wanted to share some information from The Ohio State University on using fungicide at R1 to protect corn from DON. Now, we all remember years when, our corn got those ear molds and then it got docked at the elevators. And, if you're in Ohio or even Southeast Michigan, you tend to worry about this even more due to the greater incidence in those areas. But yeah, if we look according to Ohio State, what they say is that the fungus that produces Don primarily infects corn ears during pollination, while those silks are fresh or wet, that R1 growth stage. Now, what they say is, quote, effective management of Don requires the combination of multiple strategies. Now, they also say that, quote, of many fungicides available for corn disease management, 2 are considered to be most consistently effective at suppressing gibberella ear rot and Don. These 2 products are Proline 480SC and Miravis Neo, end quote. Now, they have shown the best results if applied when silks are wet, that early to mid R1 growth stage there. But the fungicide must penetrate the canopy and reach the corn silks when they're still wet in order to be effective. They say that these applications made after silks are dry and brown are considerably less effective at reducing Don. And of course, as always, be sure to read and follow all the labeled instructions on those fungicides. Now, as for the other side of the coin, in those areas that continue to be considerably drier than normal, we're actually seeing spider mites in soybeans. Now, remember, when scouting for spider mites, the first thing you'll see will be leaves that are typically on or near the edges of your fields that they start to show plants with a kind of a mottled look to their leaves. When it gets worse, those leaves start to have more of a bronze look to them. And boy, eventually those plants will die completely from the mites just sucking all the moisture right out of them. So therefore, to confirm if you have spider mites, go out and pull some of the suspect plants in those areas and just shake them onto something white, like a piece of paper or hood of a light-colored truck, whatever you've got there. And after shaking them onto that paper, just take a look. If you do have spider mites, what you'll see is what looks like just grains of sand on that white surface. Now, if you'll just wait about 10 seconds, you'll start to see those grains of sand start to move. Now, these are the 2 spotted spider mites you're seeing. So, well, now what? Yeah, you find those out there. If you got to kind of watch the weather and make some decisions here. So, if you expect more hot and dry weather in the forecast, boy, I highly recommend applying a miticide out there as soon as possible. The longer we wait, boy, the more damage will be done and potentially yield lost. But, if there's rain or heavy dews in the forecast, then you could hold off on sprays and hope that the beneficial molds will come in and take care of the problem for you naturally. This decision, it's just always a judgment call. But, if you want to talk it over, just give me a call and we'll help you make some decisions there. So, as we wrap up this week's Agronomy in Action Focus Friday podcast, let's get out there and walk those fields. Check your corn for tar spot and your soybeans for spider mites if crop history and the weather conditions are putting those fields at risk of either of those issues. You remember that, boy, the earlier you catch the problem and take action to fix it, the better chance you have of getting the best performance out of those fields. This is Charles Scoville, your Golden Harvest agronomist, with your Agronomy in Action Focus Friday. Have a great week.